Hey everybody, welcome back to the Spin Rack. I'm here with my boys Petey and Cal. Say what's up, gents.
What's going on?
Hey, we're ready to rock.
Hey, today we're going to be talking about that new trailer that just dropped for Star Wars Acolyte. Oh my goodness, this looks doggone good. This goes back to I think the High Republic. Let's see what Star Wars and Disney is giving us.
Ready?
Selector, drop it.
Close your eyes.
Closing it.
Your eyes can deceive you. We must not trust them. Tell me what comes into your mind.
Life. Balance. I see fire.
Oh, carrie-anne thought. Matrix to Star Wars.
Someone is killing Jedi. It doesn't make sense.
What happened?
I sensed darkness. This isn't about good or bad. This is about power and who is allowed to use it. What is that?
No, that look off the chain. I gotta say, bro, that Star Wars has been trying, Disney has been trying to introduce the High Republic, right? That's the era just before, what was the name of that, Phantom Menace. You know, when there are tons of Jedi, Jedi are powerful. They're training. They send a bunch of them out there. It's not like what happened after, you know, the New Republic where there's like none of them, right? It's just only a handful of them. Here there are Jedi around. They're the sheriffs, the diplomats. They're going everywhere around the world. They're introducing new characters. Of course, Disney wants to create their own IP to make money off of all this stuff. You know, and this looks actually good. So, gents, what is your take on this whole thing? Seeing what happens basically before Menace shows up. You know, before the war and all those Jedi's get ready to start dying.
I'm gonna cut through the chase. I'm gonna watch it. I'm interested. Looks good. Unfortunately, I think they shot themselves in the foot before they ever got out of the gate. And I wonder why they keep doing it.
Why do you say that? No. Why do you say that?
Me?
Yes, you.
Well,
Yeah.
see, this isn't necessarily me, okay? Because I'm just here to watch the show. Unfortunately, these guys don't seem to understand that there is a group of people out there called trolls and haters. And these guys they've already been after Disney and Star Wars for the changes and for the type of things they've been doing in their shows. The lead actress, correct me if I'm wrong, the lead actress identifies as non-binary. So that's the equivalent of just taking a nice big meatball sandwich and throwing it to a ravenously hungry wolf. These people are all over it at the end of the day. And then I have to wonder, okay, you can hire whoever you want, yes. But in the same breath, because you've already made these tweaks and changes before, these guys are all on alert for it. Their shows, the YouTube shows, the podcast, they're going to just savage this before it even gets out of the gate. And you need the show to get a fair go. And they're not going to do it because you've already given them so much red meat to work with. I just think I don't agree with the choice. This is like when they decided to hire Ronald McDaniel over at NBC. Bad move there. And I have to say, I'm not too sure about the move here.
Yeah, they keep doing this, and I can't understand. Like, do these guys run background checks on who they're going to be hiring, especially when they have candidates? I mean, look, she may be a fantastic actress. I'm not sure, but at the same time, you have to say, Disney, do we really want to go through another ringer with some of this? And you have an issue with where they have the trolls have a issue with a lot of females of color taking prominent roles in certain roles. And here, I mean, we just saw what happened in the Obi-Wan Kenobi show where they definitely downed one of the main characters there. And here you have the same thing happening. And in fact, it's if you see there's
It's the
some
same.
parallels. This character in the Obi-Wan character was once a Jedi, and she then became an Inquisitor. And here you have one who looks as though because it looks like they're doing flashbacks here, like she was a Jedi and now she's not. So it's like, what are you guys trying to do? You know, it's it, look. I think it's a great. It looks really good. I guarantee this young lady is probably a great actress. Excuse me, I don't know, young lady or they. I don't know what they call themselves, but it goes back as a company. Disney, what other choices are you making? You know what I'm saying? In terms of a business, if you're trying to say, hey, this is the type of thing that you want to support, that's one thing. But then you have to understand there may be a consequence when you constantly do it. The trolls are going to go. I don't think most people really care, but there's enough of an audience that makes enough of is a very loud audience that tries to push a particular agenda. But they also feel Disney is pushing a particular agenda. So I don't know. It's like
That's the bigger for me. That's the bigger part of it, because the more you do it, you're feeding into this narrative that you have an agenda, and it should just be, hey, you chose this person for the role, you chose this person for the role, but you keep doing it, and so it feeds into that narrative where people think, see, you've got an agenda, especially when they can keep pointing to it at the end of the day. I mean, even who was it, the actress that they chose for Snow White, the live action version, it's not, I mean, I don't believe she's non-binary, but she makes all of these comments. Okay, she makes all of these comments regarding regarding the classic Disney
right, right,
film,
right, right.
regarding more of this feminist approach to the whole thing, or she makes all of these let me just say, modern feminist comments towards it, and then people are like, see, these are the people you're hiring, look at what they're saying, and you're just giving them fodder to work with, as opposed to people who just come in and say, hey, yeah, it's going to be cool to do the role, looking forward to it, looking for, I've always liked it, just standard stuff you're supposed to say as the actor or actress of this particular film. So, and again, these guys don't care if this thing is successful or not. All you're doing is giving them and the audience that they have all the red meat that they can handle. So I just don't know if it's I really don't know if that's the smartest move. I don't.
Well, I'm gonna just add in, going back to I guess the so-called trolls, right? So we have one video, put a chick in it, Star Wars, that take off of the was it South Park thing? Put a chick in it and make her gay. We have talking about the second season of it is scrapped already. And then I'm hopping down to the Acolyte. The message is strong with this one. And this is the kind of thing, there's a lot of negative thing that's come out of it. But the look of it was for me, looked like it was going to be a fun thing, though I'm kind of what I was expecting when we were going to get, what's that thing? The Phantom Menace. We were going to get the Shogun of the Jedi type of movie, but then they immediately said, we're not like an army. We just kind of try to keep the peace. It's like, no, we want you out there fighting and killing, and 3 million. You see in the next one, even though most of them died, we got a lot of Jedi fighting and whatnot. So I think what we've been asking for is getting the Shogun of the Jedi. It seems like it's gonna try to get there. We have Trinity in it, so it's like, the carrie-anne Moss is in it, so we have someone we can kind of latch onto with all these new characters, but at the same time, there's so much negativity out there. It's just crazy that that they've just gotten this far with it, and that the show isn't out, but there's so much negativity out there already. Seeing what people reaction, this, that, and the other, and going through all that other stuff. But otherwise, it looks good, but it's getting into that Star Wars thing where you do the sword and then
the question that comes up is that, do these guys want to make money? That's what you gotta ask yourself. Is there a way to do this a much more sensitive way to get a bigger tent? if you're really breaking this down into small groups that you want to focus on, one thing. But if you're trying to make it a big tent movie and spend all this money, then it doesn't make any sense. If you're like, hey, you know, let's try and make this, as big as tent together as many people as possible. You really need to take some of this stuff into account. Again, I don't know what Disney's background process is, whether the director says, hey, this is the person, that's the only person I'm going to rock with, or whether they're like, it doesn't matter. The audience is going to like it no matter what. And it isn't going to work out that way. Some things
Yeah,
you
yeah, I
have
don't
to
think
up and
so.
around. But look, hey, it looks good to me. I want to see the show. I will see the show. I'm not even going to want to see. I will see the show, and I'm hoping everything works out pretty well.
Well, there's all this stuff that's going on behind the scenes. Every show that is like, there's so many shows that they have that have been kind of, I guess, on the shelf that they're not going to show anymore, and this negativity that Disney's getting when it's like, what was it, like Rogue One? Rogue One didn't necessarily reinvent the wheel. It did have a strong female character as the lead, but at the same time, even though Princess Leia was the lead, she was a strong female character way back then. She was a princess, and that was from even the drawings. They were always going to have that. So you have this property, even though you have Luke Skywalker and Han Solo and all this other stuff, and she does become the girl, the love interest, that sort of thing. But at the same time, you had this dynamic of these characters that were, well, Princess Leia, especially in the first one, is a little more than equal. She's above those guys, and as she becomes more of a person who kind of runs around and doing that, she's equal to them. Obviously, it's more, you see a lot of them more than the other two, but we're trying to take this thing that already had this strong female, and then we go to the next series and we have Padme in there, and it's like we're not taking something that had a problem, right? We're taking something and saying, and we're bringing up the sexuality of the people, of the actors themselves, and saying this is a portion to say, hey, here we're being inclusive. Now, if the answer is that the gay community, Hollywood, need to express themselves to get this stuff out, and the audience goes running to the other way, what are you trying to do? Or is it necessary to do this, or is it necessary to make, as you were saying, to make money on this? Because you can do action stuff, you can do this stuff. Is not, like Lucas is saying, he wasn't, he was trying to connect with kids and young people and that sort of thing. I know the critics weren't there. But getting into all this other stuff in this sort of framework, which is, basic fantasy, unless you can do your fantasy, you're just going to be in a smaller market. As you go and try to do those other type of stories, and you try to bring out your aspects of your personality, maybe it just sounds like I'm trying to put people in a box, but at the same time, you're trying to do something it's not that deep. It's action, swords and hopping around on a lot of adventure stuff, and it's also for kids. So why are we getting into all this other stuff? And when we come to the Star Wars thing, it's not that heavy. Like, you have other filmmakers that can get you to all the heavy stuff you need to, and talk about what your life is outside of it too. But this is, it is what it is. It's not something that big. It's not that deep. And they kind of going a little too deep. When all in the trailer, all we're seeing is action. It's action, 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 right? So we're not getting into any sort of heavy thing. We don't need to hear. But whenever this stuff happens, we get into the backgrounds of everybody and this, and be able to, we're going to champion this sort of thing. So Disney in a tough way right now, because so much negative stuff comes out before we get out there from the testing, and
That's their own fault.
yeah.
I mean, I think
That
there's.
is
I think I
those
saw where there's.
unforced error after unforced error after unforced error. That's their own fault.
I mean, look, we had this whole blowback that they've had in Florida, right? Because of what happened to when the governor of Florida tried to change the rules about Disney, because based on how Disney responded to some of the laws that he was putting out there,
Mm-hmm.
fought back. And one thing that people from the LGBTQ community had once said is that Star Wars was not bringing any characters like this in any of its movies. You weren't bumping into any, as they say, LGBTQ characters. And I don't know if now it's just been like, hey, we're
In
going to
Star
actively
Wars,
do this. That's what they claim. That's what there was in this article they claim. But I'm just saying the question is whether or not now there was a reaction like, hey, we got to make sure we bring everybody in and let's do everything here as possible. And of course, let's get a black, gay, female character and cover three bases at once is the answer. I don't know, but I just get that it's like what when you look at the demographics, when they get the numbers and they look at the demographics of the Star Wars audience, what do they see? You know what I'm trying to say? Who do they see? And probably the question is, when they see these numbers, are they saying, "Hey, we need to have something a little bit different because our audience skews much older," or it's this particular audience brings in more cash? I don't know. You know,
I just think they screwed themselves because I think they locked themselves into the point where they're gonna no, we're gonna show diversity and we're gonna show this. So now if they don't do it, they're gonna get a whole bunch of people. Oh, see, you guys weren't real, okay? Or look, they're slipping, they're sliding back. You don't have any type of representation in inside of your movies, inside of your films, inside of these particular things. Okay, but then you go the other route. When you do it, the other guys are after you. The other guys are after you. Like, look, you guys keep making all these changes. You have an agenda, so on and so forth, and it's kind of mind numbing because Disney was able to do all of this stuff without an issue. Everybody pretty much, the consensus was the average person, if you went, everybody liked Disney. And nobody had an issue with Star Wars. But then the whole idea is like, we got to have this particular sort of character because when we go into space, or when we go into the future, this is necessary. I was like, no, it's fiction. It's a totally fictional world at the end of the day. And you're trying to marry certain things to it that don't even need to happen. Especially when you're encountering every other person is an alien. So, but they really did lock themselves into it because I forget what what is it called, the DEI, that score, but these guys, they get, once I found out about this thing too, I was just like, okay, you get just a really big score for adding someone in who is part of the LGBTQ community. You get like a boost in score, and if he's female, you get a boost in score. And now this isn't something behind the scenes that only they know about. People know about this. Every time they see this, it's like, this is not genuine. You're just trying to boost your score on this particular scale. So what's your response to that? Your response to that is yes, and we're going to keep on boosting our score. But, at the cost of at the cost of what might be a really, really good show that's going to get savaged. It's going to get savaged and picked apart sight unseen and continue to be picked apart, not necessarily because it's bad, but because it's good for other people's ratings. You got to you got to start heading some of that stuff off, head them off, cut them off at the pass, as the old saying goes, because then you're not going to be able to come out and produce anything without being scrutinized by either side. And that's not what your job is supposed to do. Your job is supposed to entertain people, not come over here and get a great DEI score.
Well, with that said, let's move on to this other thing Mars had, where they talk about people having Star Wars fatigue. All right. Remember this thing that you sent me?
Yeah, I do. Star Wars fatigue.
So I would agree that fatigue of bad movies, with the Rise of Skywalker being a bad movie, a bad sort of ending, and I felt everything they were trying to do, even though it doesn't, it's my own idea, is that Rey was gonna be pulled to the dark side, but we'd have to do another movie. Like it would be a ruse. But at the same time, whatever you think would be a good movie, the what's the name, Rey is not an example of people being exhausted. They're exhausted because the Last Jedi wasn't good, and the Rise wasn't good. And then we have subject matter where we have people going into a saloon, and they have the Western slash I guess was it King? Like that sort of subject matter where people going through the desert type of deal. You have the same subject matter. When I think I only know about what's the name? What's that movie? Splinter in the Mind's Eye. Like I feel like they should have given us either animation or stuff like that of some of these stories, of these fantastical stories that don't always lead to the same sort of thing all the time. but we might be seeing Luke and Leia and all these other characters, which I guess they don't like those characters, but maybe they should be giving us some stuff that's in the books, or take the stuff in the books and kind of morph it so you can use your new characters or something like that. But if you have the same subject matter, people walking around through these kind of woods or deserts and whatnot, and then wandering and fighting someone, you're going to have fatigue because it's sort of the same sort of areas and locations of where you're doing that. You're having a hard time giving new locations. And when you give a new location, like in The Last Jedi, where you got the casino, it's not like the way you got to the saloon, which was like, wow, you got to what's the name? It just looked like a regular casino. It's like they didn't really put any thought into it to make it like I think what was it Solo? They kind of when they went to that area, it looked like they kind of thought of stuff. But in my opinion, the fatigue is the subject matter can seem the same like the sameness of it. So that's where the issue. And there's so many bad things that have come out that it's kind of hard to kind of.
Yeah, there you go. There you go. That's the part right over there that I jump on because you have a period of like with the Western, that was the movie, and they produced more Westerns every year than they ever produced superhero movies in a given year. And but people loved it. People ate it up. Western, 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 Western for a good period of time. It was the Western. And then you can say, well, they got fatigue. Yeah, because there were so many of them. And then, it's not like the Western totally died, okay, but it wasn't the dominant film that they were making at the end of the day. Here, you have, okay, we're making stuff, and it's not good. We're making poor decisions. I'm probably in the minority. I'm probably one of the few people who enjoyed The Last Jedi. I said, no, I didn't have too much of a problem with it, but I immediately empathized with everybody who was waiting to see Luke Skywalker, and that's what they got. I was like, you really screwed up there. I said, whoever wrote that, you screwed up. And whoever let you write that, they screwed up too. That should have never been the case when it came to Luke Skywalker. And you haven't seen this guy in decades, and you have fans who love Luke Skywalker, and this is what you're giving them? He gave up? He screwed up after all the stuff that he went through?
Look, I think I gotta look. I get your point, and I get your thing. Look, I think this is the same thing. If they're talking about superhero fatigue, I think there's also Star Wars fatigue, without a doubt. But I think
Yeah,
it's down
they're
to the
tired of
quality of
bad
the show because
stories. They're
yeah, I
tired of
know,
bad stories.
but Andor was a great story, and it didn't do as strong. It wasn't as strong as a seller as others,
And
right?
why was that? And why
And
was that? Because Andor got sandwiched in between scat on the left and scat on the right. And then nobody was going to be looking.
so Andor is. I'm reading here in the article. It says that Andor is still the saga, even though the quality, Andor is still considered one of the least watched Disney Plus series.
Mm-hmm. Well,
So,
again,
and,
I'll say the
and
same.
so
I'll say the same thing I just said. If you're producing stuff that people don't like, and there's so many options now. There's so many options to stream. There's so many things to watch or just doom scroll. Why are they going to go searching out for the best of what you're doing when they can just say, you know what, this is all trash. I'm going to go watch something else. And we watched Andor. Andor was really good. That was a very well produced series. I'm looking forward to the second season, but you can't give them the nonsense that you did in Obi-Wan Kenobi, where people are looking forward to it. Or you come over here and you do these other shows where the stuff is bad. You do Boba Fett, which was hella bad, and then you expect people like, okay, we're just going to keep watching. No, eventually your viewership is going to taper off. That's not the fault of Andor, but you get sandwiched in. I mean, what Solo? I didn't think Solo was a horrible movie, but do you know how many guys were happy that film did poorly because they hated The Last Jedi? It transferred. They're like, yeah, you deserve it because The Last Jedi sucked and you did all these changes and you screwed over Luke Skywalker and now nobody likes your movies at the end of the day. Now, I don't know if that's necessarily the reason for what happened, but these guys were happy. These are Star Wars fans supposedly, and they're happy that Solo did poorly. So yeah, Andor could have been, Andor could have been top 10 at the end of the day, but you can't produce low quality, controversial things that are gonna just polarize people and then say, well, look, this was good. Why didn't anybody watch this? Because you screwed up with everything else.
again,
That's the
what I'm saying is that you're right, the quality, but I think the problem is that there's so much product, right? Take the time to create good product, and you know what, and differentiate your product. I think one thing that people see Star Wars, and there's so much like, where do I go? Where do I begin? Where do I start? It's like ever seen Gundam, right? Gundam, there's so much stuff on Gundam. Where do you start on Gundam, right? And so that's what I'm saying. You need to simplify. If you're going to do a story, you got to say some of these stories are a little different from others, and you got to. So I guess they're starting to do this even in Marvel, where we're going to do some horror based superhero films, and we're going to do some magical based superhero films, and we're going to do some.
They already did that.
You know, I'm just saying this is how they're differentiating, and they're going to probably end up doing something similar too. But you're never going to do as well as possible if you don't try at least to take the time to develop the quality of the show, and also the audience. The audience has to be brought in. You got to think, this is the show I'm doing. What's my audience? And this is the show that I'm doing to do the audience. Either you teach your audience what's going on so they enjoy it more, or you say, you know what, let me not do that. Let me go back and find an audience for a show that I want. Mandalorian has done well. They had Mandalorian season 2 and 3. Those still are the top shows that came out of the show. But Ahsoka, which we were thinking, thought should have been a much bigger story, didn't do quite as well, right? And I guess it's because while Ahsoka for us, I've read Ahsoka and I've seen Ahsoka and I've watched it. It unfortunately didn't translate as well as could be.
You said read. So which you saying that there's stories that you read about Ahsoka that would be better than the show that you saw?
I think the Clone Wars series is just fantastic. It does a great job with Ahsoka. All that whole thing is fantastic, and how they handle that. But what I'm saying is that you have to they didn't do enough of a job of for people who from what I understand, some of the current Star Wars fans was wanting to see more, and some of the ones who weren't there were not sure what was going on there. So you have to sell it in a particular way. Mando's a really simple thing where it's like, this is a space western, it's a bounty hunter, and he finds a kid. What is it? I think you said it before, lone wolf, right? And cub, right?
Yeah.
And that's basically it. And then people love Mandalorian. So you got to find something like that works.
No, all right. You're a Star Wars fan. I gotta cut you off. Tell me a book that you think would be a good series or movie that would be 10 times better than what we've seen.
It's all about the execution of these things, right?
Oh, come on, man. Come on. He just served it up, and you over here taking the Dodge, and I know how big of a Star Wars fan you are.
You know what?
And I know you read all the stuff.
I'm not taking the Dodge. You know what's going to be good? They're doing it right now, right? They're doing the Thrawn series, and I've been talking about that for a while.
Heir to the Empire? I agree.
That's going to be it. If they do it right, they take the time, the quality, and bring this out. It should be huge, right? I mean, because this was a series of books that reestablished Star Wars. Because after that, they hadn't done the movies, and the books started coming out, and this was a book series that did it. And you have a lot of people who you have a guy who's going head to head with Jedi, but he's not fighting them with fighting. He's using his mind to get around. How do you counter the Jedi doing this? You do that. How do you counter the New Republic? This. These are my limitations. How do I take over help redo the Empire? So it's doing all these different things, and that's why that guy was good. But again, it's all in the execution of it. Hopefully, the story Ahsoka is the basic beginning of it, and so and that's another thing too. Ahsoka was a complete different change from what the book is, right? Like how they meet Thrawn is weird. But
so you're saying it's not as good as the books. That's all I want.
You're never gonna get the detail of the book. Like in Shogun, I'm reading the book now, and the book is just so much more as opposed to the TV.
It's a book. It's a different medium. We all know how that works. I thought the first season of Ahsoka was exactly what it needed to be. It's a great start. It didn't have to necessarily knock stuff out of the park. It just had to get on base and not get picked off. It did that. It didn't make the mistake of the other ones. We're like, okay, we're gonna go try to delve into some contemporary nonsense, about gender politics or this social argument or what have you. It gave a lot of people what they were interested in terms of Ahsoka. The parts with Anakin Skywalker, Darth Vader, very well executed, and it's getting a second season, so you can build on it. You don't have to get everything right the first time, but you do need a solid foundation. I thought they executed that well in the first season, and if they continue with that, then you can slowly but surely get away from a lot of the trash that you did with Star Wars before then. However, okay. You do Ahsoka, and then after you do Ahsoka, now you got the new show. So like, all right, I don't know what you guys want to do. At some point, you have to want At some point, you have to want to be successful, and you can't. I mean, you let go of an actress because you thought that actress was radioactive towards what you.
We lost you. But you're on a strong point. We
You
lost
make.
the actress. The actress. You said
See,
to start on. You said you lost an actress.
doesn't make
That's the portion.
any sense.
Hey, Cal. Cal,
That's okay. I'll interpret for Cal. So what Cal was
please.
saying
No, he had an important part there. Cal.
again. So I will interpret for Cal. So yeah. So they lost an actress, and I mean, look at what happened when they knocked the whole Rogue One series and said that would be horrible, but then it ended up turning out that was one of the better Star Wars films that come out. Right? It was a hit. People liked it and stuff. But just because it's a hit doesn't necessarily mean it's the best. We've seen it. They made tons of movies with the sequels. But going back to the TV show, Andor, yeah, was one of the best ones there.
Well, I think the mistake of Rogue One was trying to keep it finite. That could have been the next set of movies, but they already had a next set of movies of these knucklehead kids, the Scooby kids, playing around with the Jedi stuff. When we had basically what we want is another group of Jedi, or not Jedi, of the ragtag group of seven samurais to go into the next realm and deal with all the new adversaries. That's what we're doing. But I think if you have novelized, and I understand people get tired of writing.
These are actually they weren't that bad. I won't buy them again though.
This
Gotta
is
mute.
I never
yeah.
bought them before.
Mute. Yes.
I'm asking to mute. What was it? I think I get it that people don't want to have to write someone else's words and transcribe it, but at the same time, when you're striking out in the comics and on Star Wars, at some point you get someone that's interested in translating some of the cool stuff, and then coming in and trying to get what you want to do. I understand it. It's boring to sit back and transcribe something you probably think isn't that good. But at the same time, you need to add some sort of flair to it. You need to not just say, hey, we just had someone walk into the saloon and say, got it, that's the take. It's like, no. We've seen that 3 million times. We need something else to kind of bring us into it. And I think it's kind of like the only thing I can describe it in is I saw a cartoon series of the Fantastic Four that was really dull early on. And then the second season, they just kind of got their act together and there's a lot more energy in it. So try to get some more energy into it and try to use stuff, because basically you got material. You don't need to sit around and say, well, why am I wasting my time on all these books that no one, it's not a people don't remember these books. It's like you're gonna be the X-Men stuff, everything that they did is stuff that was in the cartoon. And I didn't even know that. I didn't know that at the end of the cartoon, Xavier gets hit by somebody and it causes his power to interact and kind of almost kill everyone at once, which is a bit that was used, I think, in X2. But then at the end of the cartoon, they turned it into something that he could affect the whole. That's how people find out he's a mutant. And then they used it for Logan. That was the whole premise and the biggest part of Xavier going around there and his dream being dead. And at the same time, he's portion of why the dream is dead because the mutant hurt somebody. So it's like you can pull from these things. And Logan's one of the favorite movies. And you got X2, who's a portion of.
Star Wars stuff.
I'm saying you utilize the subject matter that's already there, not sit around and saying, oh my God, I'm a writer. Why am I transcribing? That's what writers go watch cartoon, comedians and steal their stuff and put it in their shows. Like, just take the books, find out what the best books are, and do them. And make sure they're saying, hey, we've had the scene of a Jedi walking. We already had the Mandalorian walking into town, just like the Western, someone walking into town. Let's figure something else out. Can we do something else with the layout? And let's try to have some energy. People like the Seven Samurai. Let's have a real next Seven Samurai instead of Rey and Finn, like these two characters that and everyone's gonna revolve around these guys.
But the problem here is that I mean, there's so much baggage, unfortunately. And this is probably why they needed a break between the last series of movies. When you have, um, Ray, she is not a, some people like what they did to Luke Skywalker, what they did to, Leia. I mean, there's already stories about that whole area, and they just like, "Well, we don't care. We're gonna do whatever the hell we're gonna do." You, the problem comes down also is that they don't respect the source material. And we've talked about this many times. And if you don't respect the source material and successful stories and not trying to adapt them, I know there's this whole thing in Hollywood we don't want to adapt, but I know in other cultures, you know, adaptation is great. You adapt it. I mean, they're coming out with another version of the Count of Monte Cristo, right? And of
Mhm.
course, there's always within that adaptation, there's ways to make this movie different and your own. Dune, they just did another adaptation of Dune. They did another adaptation is different the way it looks and feels, but it's still coming out from the same source material. Here, you don't feel that way. You feel, well, I got the source. Yeah, we're going to use this story, but it's story name alone and forward. We're going to do our own thing. And I think that's what disappoints certain people sometimes. You have a particular audience that reads these books or other parts of media that are related, like you're talking about the X Men, and then they just go their own way. And in fact, when we do our next review on the latest X Men, we'll talk about that. Okay.
Okay.
But hey, anything further on Star Wars?
I think that's it. We're
That's
fatigued.
it.
And we're fatigued. We want better short stories.
Yeah. Oh, I mean, I think they've come out with some stories, but again, this all
Oh,
started with,
soon.
you know, sorry,
It's not fatigue. It's bad stories. Nobody has energy for a bad story.
it's no
You know, the
bad
whole
story,
like
but
it's a misnomer. It's a misnomer when you say, "Oh, it's superhero fatigue" or "it's Star Wars fatigue." Everybody gets tired when the stories aren't good. Okay, I've never heard of a situation where they're like, "Oh, we're tired of this," and it's so good. We're just tired of it being good. Can you please give us some bad stories? No, the stories aren't good.
and also when they constantly get into this um um battle of, you know, they get into this whole battle that they don't really need to get into, that Disney keeps finding itself into.
Well, you talking about the whole social
The main
justice?
character, in the story that's coming up, the Acolyte. So I mean, these
Then
are the type of things we have to, you know, you got to really take some of this stuff into perspective and say, hey, what's going on with my audience? Is this something that my audience will come with? Or go,
Well, who's and that's the thing you also want to understand is who is your audience. You know, if your audience is 90% people who want to see these type of moves, then hey, you're giving your audience what they want. If your audience is not, then you have to ask, well, what's the sense in doing this? Because we're not pleasing the audience that's tuning in for this. And unfortunately, most of the I mean, I learned this with DC Comics, where a lot of these guys would complain, and these are supposedly DC fans, readers. You know, they fully support DC. But where Marvel has Marvel zombies, DC has like DC detractors. You know, they always, oh, DC sucks. They don't know what they're doing. So, you know, they were like, DC should do this. They should do that. So DC actually listened and said, okay, we're going to give you those type of stories. They did it. They hated them. They either hated them or they didn't read them like, oh, this is terrible, so on and so. So they never did it again. They never did it again because they learned their lesson. They said, you guys don't know what you want. We got to just concentrate on execution. And that's pretty much the end of it. When you're doing it with Star Wars, I don't think it's too much different because you did, oh my goodness. How much air did Reva suck out of the room in Obi-Wan Kenobi? How much time did that character get instead of the Grand Inquisitor or Obi-Wan Kenobi or Anakin Skywalker? And I actually enjoyed Obi-Wan Kenobi, but I was a guy who was really looking forward to that. Obi-Wan Kenobi is my favorite character from Star Wars. And like Reva got like 30% of the screen time. She's a new character. Nobody really cares about her. It's something else if she's the breakout star with the time that she got. Instead of they decided, no, we're going to do this particular thing. It was a mistake. They got hit over the head for it several times. And when they fell onto the ground, people still kept kicking them. And they haven't learned their lesson from it. They just haven't learned their lesson at the end of the day. You already have an established universe with well-wrought characters, and people want to know more about these particular characters and the universe that's still there to be explored, not this topical mess that you want to keep throwing in to every show because you're trying to get a certain score. It looks like an agenda. It is an agenda, and you keep paying for it.
Well, I kind of disagree. I think that with Obi-Wan, they have the established story, and then
Reva,
you have another story with another
you think
character.
Reva was you
Oh,
think Reva was a good idea? You think Reva was a good idea? Is that
I
what you're
think so.
telling me?
I think the story overall that you needed something new and fresh to try.
I,
It
I'm
would
going to
just be
ask again.
it just
I'm going
couldn't
to
be
ask
Obi-Wan.
again. I just want this on the record. I just want this on the record. Okay, I'm going to ask again. And if you dodge, everybody's going to know it's a dodge. Do
First of
you
all, this is not
believe
a court
that
of
the
law,
character?
and
Do
this is
you
not a court of
believe?
law, and you're
Do
not going
you
to lock me into
believe that the
anything.
character?
So
Do
what
you
I'm
believe that the
saying,
character of Reva, as shown in that series, Obi
I
Wan
think no,
Kenobi? Do you believe that was a good idea?
I have no problem with Reva. I think they could have improved the character, done a better job of it. That's
So
it.
you thought it was okay. So you thought it was a good idea. Okay,
I
so
think
that's
it
on the
is. I
record.
think you're going to have an older character, an older established character, and then you're going to have a younger character that people may attach. A different part of the audience may
Well,
connect.
hey, just so you know, with me, your Star Wars bona fides are out the window because you decided to do that. So,
Oh God.
okay,
It's okay. You know what? It's okay with me because it doesn't bother me. Okay.
no, see, you don't care because it doesn't bother you because it's Obi-Wan Kenobi. Now, if it was Thrawn and they decided to kill off Thrawn in the first episode, I already know where you would be. You'd be jumping, running into the kitchen for the butcher knife and looking to hack somebody into pieces. So we already know that you already know where your loyalties lie. It wasn't a villain at the end of the day. You didn't
Hey,
care. Oh, and I
I like
forgot
good guys
you were
too.
also you were also upset when Obi-Wan Kenobi decided to put the smackdown on Darth Vader in the series and told him, "Sit down, young man," and showed him how it was done. So that's why you didn't care anyway, because Darth Vader didn't come over and wreck shop like you wanted to. But for the rest of the time we're doing this, your bona fides are out the window. You thought that I'm going to remind you every single time. You thought Reva was a good idea. Everybody hear that? Good. Mars
I'm
thought
okay with
Reva
it.
was a
Look,
good idea.
so getting back to this again, I mean, because we got to wrap it up because we've been on this for a minute. I think that overall we're saying that the stories are not good quality stories. Know your audience, right, and get out there, do a good job of presenting these particular stories to people. Again, Andor, they did a good job with that, but yeah, it didn't resonate with a lot of people. But hopefully people will find it. I say, why not put that sucker on Netflix? If you put it on Netflix, guess what? It's going to be a hit. You know what I'm trying to say?
Well, there's a difference in how they're going to put it together. You have it all at once and you can binge it. And at the same time, whatever they're going to do, they're going to make sure it works. They're going to find a way. Hey,
Binging doesn't work. Binging doesn't work. You know why? Because
what?
the Avatar they just had, the Avatar cartoon show, animated show, was a hit. It was #1 forever, right? And people could have binged it, and they did it, right? But when they did the series here, which is done well, it's in the top 10. But the when you don't binge it, you don't get that weekly discussion and about what's happening and building your audience. Dropping it all at once, I understand that for an unknown show, but for an established show, it is. And almost all of them, even Netflix is starting to go back where they're starting to start dropping a set of episodes and not dropping everything because you know what? The model of dropping everything doesn't really work in terms of the money for this whole industry. It doesn't support it, right? That's why all of them are coming back.
What are you talking about?
It worked for Netflix for years.
Yeah.
But that's only Netflix. It hasn't worked for the others.
Only because they just said no. They don't even do it. They don't even do what's in it because they're not in the business of. They're not in the business of what Netflix was doing. They just flooded the market and ruined it.
But we're digressing. We digress.
All right, here we go. We're digressing.
Okay, we digress.
You digress.
Let's wrap it up.
Trying to say you had a point where it was saying they would have made it successful, and I agreed. And then now you're talking about, well, wait a second. Now that's that. They shouldn't binge because you can't binge anymore. It's like, no. Once you open that up, that's the thing. You can't close that away. Now try to get them back to, hey, we're gonna watch it monthly. They do have shows like that, but at the same time, we can't sit around here and say binging doesn't work because people do that too. There's a ton of
they're doing it. More and more. Netflix never used to have shows in blocks or do it weekly. Now they're doing it. So why they're doing that? Because they're seeing the numbers. If they want to retain the audience, that's what they're going to do.
Mars, I thought you wanted to rap, man.
Let's wrap. I know, but I didn't want him to have the last word, man.
Yeah, I knew.
So if you don't want him to have the last word,
or
show.
Okay, so
wrap the show.
Do we like the? Hey, I'm not going to repeat.
No, we don't know what it is because we're worried of what's going on with Star Wars. The trailer looked okay.
Looked great.
We trust them.
It looked great, and I'm going to trust them. I close my eyes.
Yeah, of course you're going to trust them.
Spinnerack.
We're out.
Out.